proficiency-based diploma is not required until the class of 2021. This law does not require the implementation of 1 through 4 grading, nor does it require the use of Empower as an academic management system. We have a couple of general concerns, the students who have signed this. One being Lewiston's passed with 1 through 4 grading in the high school. When the now senior class were freshmen, their freshman grades are not counted on their transcript. They are present, but they are not factored in, which is an injustice to the hard work that they did that year. The lack of professional development for teachers in the high school. Freshman teachers are the ones that have the training in Empower. This is also their first year. The decision to affect the junior and senior students of Lewiston High School in the 2018-2019 school year, possibly hindering the college application process of these students. We have reached out to colleges and they are saying that this is going to be a challenge for us. So we formally request a change in the decision or decision process to implement 1 through 4 grading. If I may present this to you with the 250 names, is that all right, Mr. Chair? Yes, I am. Thank you.
Am I good to go? All right. I'm Sam Cornamash. I live on 7 Bierce Ave, and I'm a student at Lewiston Middle School. I don't have a fancy speech or any petition or anything. I just like to bring forward that the honor roll that we have is back when the 1 through 100 days, it was like a challenge and kind of like a, hey, I need to get an 85 on my next math test so I can make the honor roll. And when I made the honor roll, it was a real accomplishment for me. I felt like I did it. I can, tell my friends, tell my family, and they felt happy for me. Well, this past trimester, I made the honor roll, and whenever my grandparents would say, "Nice job, Sam, you made the honor roll," I couldn't really accept the compliment because it's Hal grades. You just show up to class, get your work done, and you make the honor roll. And that may do it for some people, but it doesn't do it for me because I've lost that, push to start getting better grades or fix the next math test. Like, if I get a 2.5, sure, I want to fix that because I want to get the highest grades possible, but it's not going to affect whether or not I make the honor roll, which is kind of disappointing. And if we were to go back to 1 through 100 instead of 1 through 4, it would, implement the same old things that we had. I would have the same drive to boost my grade up that many points so I can make the honor roll. And that's all I really have, but that's what I'd like, to happen. That's what I'd like, to happen, or if there were a change, or maybe even just if we stay with 1 through 4, maybe even implement an honor roll that would use 1 through 4, because honor roll is really my main concern, because that's pretty much one of my favorite things to do in school. Like, try to get, hey, I can get honor roll. That's my challenge. New trimester, let's get honor roll. So that's all I really have. Thank you for your time, and yay, hooray.
My name's Hunter Steele. I'm from 8 Mount View Terrace, Lewiston. So today I went around after school and I went and asked the teachers some questions. I asked them if they had to, how would they put the 4 through 1 grading system into 1 through 100? And the results I got kind of concerned me. We have people that are ranging 4s. One said you have to get exactly 100 in order to get a 4. Others said 90 through 100. Just the consistency is not there. 3s were anything above a 70. That is concerning, as 2 grades can range over a span of what we now have as 30 grades. So what I did, I went home and I looked up, and do you guys know about the Olympics as it's around right now? So in 1992, Gail Devers was in Barcelona doing an Olympic track race, and she beat the 5th place finisher by a 1/10 of a second. And she got the gold, and the other person did not get a medal. So what I feel is happening now is you are wanting to take 1 through 5th and give all of them bronze medals, and that is not acceptable with me, and I know that's not acceptable with the people who are in 1st and 2nd, as this is deteriorating their grades and how they are going to apply to college. So I just ask that you please get away with this 1 through 4 grading system.
Hello? Hello? I hope the other room can hear me. Hi, everybody. I'm Robert Shepard, 12 Manning Place, Lewiston, Maine. I'd love to start off with a endearing anecdote or cool statistics, but I don't have those right now. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. I would prefer not to try to reinvent the wheel in my senior year and risk having it crash and burn, because it's kind of an important year. Yeah, thank you. Have a good night.
Are there any other students available who would like to speak?
My name is Hope Bowen, and I live at 31 Buttonwood Lane. I'm a senior at Lewiston High School, and I was part of the freshman class whose grades are now not considered in the college process. And through my freshman year and now seeing the juniors worried about next year with the 1 through 4 grading system, I honestly totally feel for them, because junior year was really hard for me as well as it was for a lot of other students, and senior year is really stressful too, with the whole college process and everyone asking you what do you want to do with your life, and having to be worried about 1 through 4 grading system. And it's honestly discouraging for the students that actually try, and putting over 1,000 students into a 1 through 4 category. I tried really hard my freshman year, and I was one out of a few students who had nothing to make up at the end of the year. And people who got to retake or didn't do anything the rest of the year got the same grades as I did, but yet it doesn't count for anything. And kind of what Robert said, not really that their year's gonna crash and burn, but it kind of feels that way. And a lot of students have lost their drive and their motivation. I used to be a really motivated student, but I still do my work and I still try hard, but I don't feel I have to try as hard, because why should I when other students who aren't trying are getting the same grades as me? Thank you.
Are there any others in the audience? Any in the hallway? All right, and before we continue, can I have a show of hands who would like to speak this evening? Any in the hallway out there? Can someone check for me? Sammy? Yeah?
Colby will check the other room for you.
Oh, it's being sent in the other room as well? All right, so we have close to 20. Yeah, close to 20 people. So Ms. Sias has requested to speak at the 3-minute mark, but I'm going to have to limit it to 2 minutes at this point, because otherwise we'll be here for a long duration this evening. So if you don't mind, Sammy, you could start.
Samantha Garnett Sias. I teach math at the high school. I'm the president of the Lewiston Education Association, and I live at 74 Rachel Boulevard. Members of the school committee and Superintendent Webster, I've stood at this podium in the past and have advocated for educator voice to be included in decision making, for appropriate expenditures in the budget, and for relief of teacher workload with literal tears in my eyes. But today I stand before you with a heavy heart. After the most recent school shooting in Florida, I have not been able to put aside the thought that we are doing school wrong. Here and in so many other places across the state and nation, I saw genuine fear in my students' eyes Friday when we spoke about that awful event together. And after 2 school safety threats in Lewiston, however unsubstantiated they proved to be, we must address the fact that the student population that we serve in Lewiston Public Schools is facing much higher rates of social emotional disadvantage and mental health related issues. This increase alone should be compelling enough for LPS to redirect resources to increase the number of mental health professionals directly accessible to our students in schools. Our schools need to be staffed with more adults who are trained to work on these rising issues so that our schools feel more like a safe haven, suitable for teaching and learning. Add to this change in our student population the fact that teachers in Lewiston are under insurmountable stress. This stress is often matched by resentment for the decisions made above us that pull us away from our students. We entered the profession of teaching with humble intent and the knowledge that the job would be taxing yet rewarding. This has proven to be true tenfold. However, the increase in workload has me wondering how much longer I can sustain this career. In recent years, teachers in Lewiston have expressed that the ever-growing list of expectations has been tremendously difficult to keep up with. Many of us also feel deeply that a good number of the changes we've undertaken are genuinely not in the best interest of students. Thank you. Despite our efforts to raise this awareness, the administrative requests continue to roll in, and the latest asks, empower proficiency-based learning and all that comes along with them, have been the figurative straw on the overburdened backs of many Lewiston educators. I'd like you to pause to consider this question. As we embrace this new generation of students with more intense needs than ever, can Lewiston afford to lose quality educators? Can Lewiston afford to have unhappy, disgruntled, depressed, or exhausted teachers? The answer should be an undeniable no and should fill this room with a resounding call to change. I would like to request that you consider that change with rolling back in power and immediate relief to some teachers with workload. I have some other concerns, but clearly it's not going to fit in a minute. I will forward the rest of my remarks to stay within the time constraint.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Keith Levesque. I'm an LHS teacher, LEA vice president, and I own property at 90 Fairlawn Ave in Lewiston. So I think it would be remiss if in our discussion about PBL and Empower, we didn't mention the monetary costs to the district and how those funds could instead be allocated. As you've heard from students tonight, and you'll continue to hear from parents and other teachers, Empower is not the user-friendly product that was pitched to us. However, the district has spent $4,500 per building for use of the program. That's in addition to what we've already been paying and are paying for Power School. Each building also has an Empower facilitator that earns a $1,200 stipend, and the district purchased a technical support package for Empower. Additionally, it was proposed last budget season and likely will be again to have the Empower admin position at an estimated cost of $85,000. There's numerous other budget items, which I'd say we're really not getting a good return on our investment. Some things you may want to look into include the Lucy Calkins program, which according to Barbara Feinberg in a Hoover Institution review of the Calkins method, said that, quote, no independent research backs the efficacy of her programs. And I'd advise looking into the approximately $141,000 that the district has spent over the last 4 years to the Great Schools Partnership, whose mission is to, quote, develop and advocate for sustainable educational policies, effective school leadership, proven instructional practices, and student-centered learning models built on strong community connections, end quote. It's on your shoulders to decide whether this mission is being accomplished and this money well spent. I believe as an educator, a parent, and a taxpayer in this community that we need a redirection of our resources, budget lines included, to support the hiring of more staff, particularly mental health professionals that work with students face-to-face. Thank you for your time and consideration.
My name is Allison Litton. I teach at Longley Elementary. Members of the Lewiston School Committee, Superintendent Webster, my students are the reason I stand before you tonight. In my 8 years of teaching, I have served 189 students. 189 students that have been categorized as at risk. Many not equipped with the social or emotional skills to come to school each day, available to learn the curriculum that I have been charged to teach, allowing all students to achieve proficiency each year. Many students possess resilient traits, but what about those that do not? A resilient person is one who is effective in managing emotions and bouncing back from difficult situations, has awareness of their own strengths and assets, one who's resourceful. They possess problem-solving skills, a sense of personal agency, self-efficacy, and the ability to reach out to others. I spend much of my day teaching to these standards. the above mentioned skills. Many of my students are not available for learning, which I was which I was hired to foster without these skills. These skills are social and emotional in nature. At times, an academic task can aid in the practice of these skills, but academics are not a priority of a 7-year-old second grader who comes to school with a past or at times current background full of psychological and/or physical trauma. Trauma, a type of damage to the mind that occurs as a result of severely distressing events that result in an overwhelming amount of stress that exceeds one's ability to cope or integrate the emotions involved with that experience. We must do more to support these students and their peers who in turn deal with the impact of our suffering students. Our focus must shift. Again, my students are the reason I stand before you this evening. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Janet Bowden, 18 Roslyn Avenue in Lewiston. Ladies and gentlemen of the school committee, I'm standing before you today as a parent, hoping that you hear my plea. Since our district has fully implemented the 1-4 grading system paired with Empower, the results have been very upsetting to me. A few of my observations have been that first, the law does not require the 1-4 grading system and the Empower program. In other words, we turned our district upside down over something that still isn't necessary. Please let that sink in for a moment. Second, our district has a contract with the Great Schools Partnership, and their desire to cash in on Lewiston Public Schools, mixed with our district leaders' desire to leave some sort of trailblazing legacy, has become a recipe for disaster. Teachers are using all of their spare time, including half-day Wednesdays, prep time, time at home with their families, just to input evidence and try to master Empower. It sounds complicated and not even close to the user-friendly program they were promised. Progress reports and report cards are extremely subjective and very hard to understand. Students have figured out that failing a test isn't a big deal because they can just retake it until they pass. There's no urgency to study and do your very best anymore. Students and teachers are feeling stressed out and helpless. Our high-achieving students are losing their motivation. Students with behavior struggles, including those with IEPs or 504 plans, most because of ADHD and autism and anxiety, will likely never achieve the How honor roll. And if they don't excel, even if they do excel academically, it seems they are destined for failure before they even try. Our district leaders continue to hold meetings and create committees regarding PBL, but they appear to be for show. Groupthink is a serious problem right now with our district leadership. My final and most disturbing observation is that our teachers are afraid to speak up against not only this grading system, but anything that our district leaders tell them they should conform to. If our educators cannot feel confident enough to speak up for themselves, how can we as parents trust that they will speak up for our children? Fortunately, we can still fix this. We can still seek proficiency without using 1-4 and Empower. We can create a proficiency-based diploma that state legislators will approve of while no longer forcing such a bad grading system in our schools. We can still open the lines of communication, beginning tonight, and motivate our teachers to speak freely and share their ideas. There is a big difference between a boss and a leader, and we need our district leadership to start leading. Thank you.
My name is Michelle Crowley. I'm a teacher at Lewiston High School, 9th grade. And we're using Empower this year. There are 12 of us. And I'm here to speak about my experience and the experience of a number of other 9th grade teachers with using Empower as a grading tool. With regard to effective communication, we think Empower has a significant amount of shortcomings. It's created barriers for teachers, parents, and other school professionals to really effectively communicate about how a student is doing. So far, we estimated that an additional 4 hours per week is spent just inputting grades and creating activities on Empower. And that's a pretty conservative estimate. This alone is a problem, but really the issue is that the increased effort on the part of teachers, because teachers really are willing to put in more effort all of the time learning these new challenges, but the problem is that it hasn't improved communication. So not only are we spending more time inputting grades, we're also getting an increased number of emails, questions from teachers, other teachers, questions from parents, questions from students. How am I doing? I can't understand Empower. So not only is it the inputting of grades, it's the increased workload surrounding responding to those questions. So I truly hope that the board will not perceive these remarks as resistance to change, because I speak for myself and the other ninth grade educators that I'm speaking on behalf of, that we've been early adopters of change in this district consistently. But I feel compelled to speak against this grading tool because I think it's plagued with problems. But I do want to thank some people here today, like Ms. Crafts and Mr. Shabbat, for their efforts to support us with the Empower experience. I just don't think that the burden to remedy this problem should lie with them. It should be lying with the developers. But unfortunately, our experience has been such that their response to our concerns has been very deficient. We haven't gotten supportive response. So I'll share the rest of my remarks over email. Thank you.
Jen St. George, 531 Pond Road. So my concerns are personal and my story is personal. I imagine there are other parents worrying how PBL grading will affect their kids' future as well. And I've talked to many educators in the state of Maine, Massachusetts, and Connecticut, from the elementary level to the high school level, and they all say I have valid concerns. My son was tested at McMahon in the beginning of the 4th grade after I watched him struggle and work so hard year after year, but was able to still get A's and B's. We discovered he has a borderline dyslexia and a processing disorder, which makes learning and testing for him difficult at times. He works very hard in school and has done very well, but some subjects are obviously harder than others. So my concern with proficiency grading is this. If there are 10 standards he needs to achieve in order to be proficient and get a 3, what does a child like mine, who may have obstacles in achieving 1 or 2 standards, get? Is he always going to get a 2.5? If he works hard and gets good grades now, but with the PBL grading, it does not represent the student that he is. A 2.5 as he moves on in high school for college applications, scholarships, or any future plans may make things difficult for him. And I do agree with I do agree with the standards breakdown of the grading system as children learn basic concepts and strategies, but we need to acknowledge the effectiveness of hard work and actual grading in the classes as these students move into the higher grades. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jennifer LaRoche Albert, 32 Bardwell Street. I'm a parent. I wear 2 hats, a parent and a teacher in the district. As a parent of a 6th grader, I no longer have access to my daughter's grade book. I don't know how she's doing. I don't know if she's missing any work or needs support in any of the areas. To learn about her progress, I need to wait for conferences, wait for teacher contact, or wait for progress and/or report cards. When does the teacher have time to reach out to me? Better yet, when do I have time as a teacher to reach out to my daughter's teacher, or let alone my students' parents? Is it before or after I plan lessons, grade formatives and summatives, input grades in Power School, input my teacher evaluation information into Randa, compile data for student learning objectives and professional growth goal, pull work together for Mud Week and Ice Week, hand collect student reassessment contracts, reteach lessons with students after school, proctor reassessments with students after school, learn through 1 through 4 grading, practice 1 through 4 scoring, and not to mention the stress to come of learning a new grading program. I know the Empower day all too well because she gets into the car and the tears start to fall. What does that 2.5 writing on her writing mean to her? Work no longer comes home because it's time consuming and that evidence takes time to put in. So it's rare that I see it, so that homeschool connection is lost. She's gone from being a driven student and a motivated student to one who cries every morning, begging to be homeschooled and asking to drop out in 6th grade. Being a parent in the district, I know families and teachers. I serve on many committees and have been involved in the district's transition to PBL from the start. 4 years ago, my son was a freshman, and I was very vocal. I was one of those parents then, too. Our students deserve better. Here we are 4 years later making some of the same mistakes. Having meetings now for Empower to teach our students and parents, it's too late. Sadly, we've lost their respect and some of their confidence. It's okay to say we've made a mistake. It's how we respond to this mistake that will define us and earn their trust, respect, and confidence back. Our students and their families deserve it. We're Lewiston. We're better than this.
My name is Sarah Morin, and I live at 22 Glory Avenue in Lewiston. I have 2 children, both at the high school. Throughout my children's education, Lewiston school system has had a consistent theme of a circle of support between teachers, students, and parents. Our current PBL system isn't working for anyone, and our circle is severely out of balance. Teachers are incredibly overwhelmed, students have become lazy learners and are uninspired, and parents cannot support teachers or hold their children accountable, all because of how PBL is set up at our school. With 4 years of PBL behind us and course corrections at every corner, we continue to stand in muddy waters, ill preparing our kids for college and for the world. My son will be going off to college in 6 short months. During his entire high school career, he has never taken a mid-year or a final. Additionally, because of the PBL retake policy, he has never taken a test or written a paper that could not be corrected by his teacher, revised, and resubmitted for a better grade. There is no amount of lecturing and college reality checks I can give him to prepare him for the brick wall that he is going to hit. How we implement PBL is up to this board. Empower in the 1 through 4 grading system is my current and greatest pain point. Empower is a teacher's roadmap. It shows where students are currently and their year-end goals. Empower is not a parent tool to enforce accountability from week to week. I want to know if my daughter didn't prepare for a test, and I want to hold her accountable. I cannot do that when I hear from teachers, "Don't worry, we'll touch on that again," or "She will have all year to master that standard." Additionally, the 1 through 4 grading system has taken away the ability for kids to stand out. This freshman year class has 358 students. If 80% of those students meet proficiency, that's 286 students, all with course grades of 3, 3.5, or a 4. Mathematically, how many different GPA configurations can there possibly be? If our children cannot shine within their own grade, within their own school, against their own peers, how can they compete within the state and nationally? When students are in high school, we should be encouraging good habits to allow them to thrive and stretch within these walls so they are marketable and desirable outside these walls. Traditional grades mean something. An 83 versus a 96 means something. In addition, I don't want to hope that our school profile is detailed enough for Lewiston, for colleges to understand our unique 1 through 4 grading system. Thank you.
My name is Doug Hoodlet. I'm a math teacher at LHS. And one of the things that I want to speak to is workload. Last year, we had 10 to 12 students that applied for ICE Week to remediate some of their standards. And it took me about 9 hours to get the work together for them. The surprising thing to me was when I returned to school after ICE Week, I found that out of those 10 to 12 students that had applied to go, only 4 showed up. This year, I had 22 that applied from my classes. So we were given some time on Wednesday to get some work together, but I knew that no matter how much time we were given, it wasn't going to be enough. So I spent 3.5 hours on my Saturday before vacation coming in and getting work together. I have a really concerned about the shift in workload and responsibility kind of shifting from students' shoulders onto teachers' shoulders. I really feel like that our students are becoming less and less motivated all the time. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tyson Reisfelder. I'm a science teacher at the Lewiston High School. I've been teaching there for 30 years. Just 2 quick points, because a lot of my colleagues have made some very salient points. I just want to add 2. First, as a parent, my son is in 8th grade. He's a very motivated, talented, and very capable student. Empower is absolutely frustrating to him. He doesn't understand, we can barely understand, where 2.5 would be on track or excellent when really he expects to be doing higher than that. As he told me, "Dad, I did a great job on this essay. This ought to be a 3.5. Why is it a 2.5? But that's adequate progress," which doesn't make any sense to him. And truth be told, it's hard for us to comprehend as well. The second point I would make is with my teacher hat on. This is not directly concerning the 1 through 4, but I will say that having been here a while, this system of formatives not counting and that retesting is the answer has made many of my students, and I hate to say this, but many of my high-performing students lazy. Why should I bother studying? I can just retake it. Thank you. That's the major point I would like to get across. I have not had the opportunity to work with Empower myself yet, being a sophomore teacher. I hear stories both ways. All I would ask you to consider is that this is really stressing a lot of students and my colleagues out. Please consider it carefully. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Kathy Boulay. I'm at 8 Mount View Terrace in Lewiston, Maine, and I'm speaking here as a parent of an LHS student. My son is currently a junior, and I am concerned about the changes in the grading system. We are currently doing college visits. My son has worked hard to maintain certain grade point averages and has high expectations. We have always encouraged him and our other children to do their best. Whatever their best may be, we will accept that. But they've set goals for themselves. And speaking with some of the colleges that we've gone to this year, as we've started early and looking at some, he's asked them, what do I need to get into your college? What are you looking for in your applications? And they talk about the essays and different things. And they talk about SAT scores, and they talk about grade point averages. Not, a 3 or a 4, but we are looking for a student with a 3.3 or better. We are looking for a student who excels in the top 10%. How can you do that with a 3 to a 4 grading system, and how can you factor those and ask these students who have worked very hard to convert those grades over after 3 years and then give one additional year with a different grading system and allow the colleges to make the decision on how they're going to convert those grades? Yes, I've heard from other parents and from others and academic people when I've spoken to them. The colleges have the ability to do that. But in speaking with the advisors that we went to at some of these schools, they told us it would be difficult and it is not going to allow them to ascertain their child's grade appropriately. Now, these students come home, and my son comes home every night and works till midnight to make sure he can get good grades. He works hard for these grades, and now he's not excited about school anymore. He's home, and he talks to me about fear of not getting into the colleges he wants to get into, fear of working so hard and seeing all these other kids taking school for granted because they can make the grades up. But he's put all this time and effort into 11 years of school. And what do I have to tell him? When you go to college, you're not going to have the ability to make up that test. You either pass the test or you fail, and if you fail so many times, you'll fail the course. We're not teaching them and instructing them what they need to do when they get to college. It's not going to help them. So I'm asking you to really look at this grading system, because I'm tired of explaining to my son, who should be excited about applying to colleges, not to be afraid. Thank you.
Good evening. Jamie Watson, 7 Marguerite Street. I first just want to touch base on Empower. I have a daughter who is in 6th grade, and we were told at the beginning of her 5th grade year that we would have access to her grades on Empower. To date, we have no access to her grades. I'm not sure why that went awry or why we were now not given access. I can't get a clear answer from anybody on that. I also have a current 5th grader. At October conferences, he was at 2 for his narrative writing. On his report card, he was in December 8th of 2017, he was a 2 on his narrative writing. On his 2/8/18 progress report, he was a 2 on his narrative writing, and this is what was stated on his report card. This progress report reflects his first trimester grade. There has been not enough evidence to show any growth for us to report, any evidence for us to report growth. When I questioned this, there was 2 months of teaching that happened, and the teacher didn't have any evidence to show a new grade, whether it remained the same, whether it shows that he did worse. I have just no formatives, no summatives, no evidence to show anything in what he's done in that 2 months. I'm assuming at that time it's still the same because I can't get into Empower to see his grades on that either. When I asked about his reading grade, which he was at a 3 at, when he took the NWAs, he scored as an 11th grader for reading, but I was told he can't get a 4 until he can reach a Z level. He's at Y, so I'm assuming he's going to get there, but there just seems to be such a disconnect between the tests that we're giving in our system and how we're grading. I mean, I would figure if he's an 11th grader reading at 11th grade level in the 5th grade, I would assume that would be a 4, but it doesn't work out that way. Communication. With not being able to see Empower, I have no idea if my kids are completing their homework like they're telling me. I have no idea how the rubrics look for anything that they're being assessed on. I have mentioned several times that I see no work coming home from either one of my children, and that still is the same today. I don't see tests. I don't see homework. I don't see essays. I see nothing. So I'm not really sure how to help them when rubrics and work is not sent home to help them how they improve. You want parents to be involved, yet you make it very difficult for that to happen. Teachers don't contact us. They don't send home anything that we're supposed to be doing. And now I get it because I see that you're trying to put in the grades. I use jump rope at my school. I can create a habits of work grade for 12 classes in a matter of 5 minutes. It shouldn't be this difficult. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we go on, is it Kathy? I think she's in the hallway. I think she left her coat behind. Oh, that's Michelle's? Okay, never mind. Continue. There's a couple seats if people want to sit down, open.
Sherry Cloutier, Ward 6. I'm here tonight because I love Lewiston schools and so do my kids. However, I'm confused with PBL grading. It seems many people are. I thought about bringing my hairdresser here tonight because she shared with me that so many people sit in her chair and lament about the awful grading system in Lewiston schools. She doesn't even have kids that go there, but she hears it. We hear it at the grocery stores. We hear it at the athletic sports practices. At a St. Dom's Lewiston game, I heard parents from both sides, Lewiston and St. Dom's. Well, at least St. Dom's has a real grading system. Is this really a laughing matter? We're joking about it, but no, it's not. The terrible grading system does not motivate children to be their best. It only encourages them to meet the minimum. I recently asked a school board member why there's no academic honor roll posted after the first trimester, and I got this for an answer. I'm quoting here. An academic honor roll will come out at the end of the year because some standards are taught year-long. Students may not achieve a 3 or higher until the end of the year, end quote. I translate this to mean that with PBL grading, our schools cannot report out who's doing exceptional work. We really don't know who's working hard and getting good grades. We're missing the key component of getting good grades. There's only a year-end list of standards, the same standards that everyone can get. I'm a technology manager here in Lewiston. I want to hire people that already know things. However, I want to hire folks that are self-motivated and can meet deadlines. PBL grading is not preparing students for real-world scenarios. Respectfully, I feel that going back to classic grading would be a good course of action at this time. Please get rid of the PBL confusion, make it so kids can once again earn good grades, be recognized for their hard work, and make it so that people are not laughing about our grading system, and so that LPS students can have transcripts and accolades like their friends at private schools. I'm going to send out an email to describe my specific problems that my family has had with this grading system. Thank you for your time.
Hi, I'm Jill Shepard. I'm at 12 Banning Place. Nice to see all of you here tonight. And I think I'm the last person to speak. So, oh no, one more, sorry. That's great. I just wanted to go back to the beginning when people started to speak because I think our children just showed us so much of their character and showed us about their passion and their fears. And I loved the 6th grader who got up and spoke about the honor roll, or the 7th grader, excuse me, at Lewiston Middle School. I have a 7th grader as well, and I agree with that. I'm here tonight for Maggie as well, but primarily for my son, who is class of 2019. I have been spending my week contacting his top 5 colleges. My son is a good student, and as I call these colleges and ask them about their requirements, GPA, is that necessary, test scores, etc., how do you feel about a blended transcript? They respond to me, worry not. Don't worry about it. We have seen all kinds of things. And I say, oh, great. And I said, what about GPAs? Well, some of them say, if they don't come with one, we're going to make one for them. Some of them say that, blended transcripts, well, they're okay, but we're really going to rely heavily on that school profile and something new to me, the school report. So I just hope that I have to put all of my, hope in the fact that these colleges will be able to, if this goes through, this 1 through 4 next year for Robert, that they will be able to contact Lewiston High School and have long discussions with the guidance counselors so that they'll be able to explain exactly how his senior year went. Something to consider.
Hi, I'm Maria Hutchins, 8 Balsam Street here in Lewiston. I just want to take a poll. How many people here like PBL and want to keep proficiency-based learning in our school system? So none of the people that have been involved in implementing this actually like it. So why do we have it?
I'm sorry, we're not here to answer questions tonight.
No, I know. It's a rhetorical question.
Oh, okay.
To me, and I'm a research scientist, so I do look at data, and I understand, wanting to take data about about the students and feed that in and say, okay, what should I do? But proficiency-based learning, the way it is a pass, non-pass. And there are universities that have tried this experiment, and it is an experiment, and our kids are the guinea pigs. And UC Santa Cruz had to go back to actually giving traditional grades. So I think that what we should do is keep the 1 to 100 grading for many of the reasons why you've heard tonight. And we should reconsider whether proficiency-based learning is really something that we need. I mean, what is the problem that we have trying to fix? And instead of, my last point is, instead of trying to make these teachers use Empower, which apparently is not that great software, why don't we empower them instead to teach our kids, bring in new projects and maybe projects-based learning. I'm all for PBL if it stands for projects-based learning, and teach kids to innovate, critical thinking, and foster their creativity, because that's what's going to make successful employees in the future. And I think any employer that looks at, oh, what's this PBL 1 through 4, they're just laughing. So, I'm not in the educational field, but I have gone to the highest point in public education, and the fact that nobody could even raise their hand in this audience that they want to keep proficiency-based learning should tell the school board something. So thank you for your time.
My name is Scott Gagnon. I live at 339 Central Avenue in Lewiston. I have 3 students in this district, one at the high school, one in the junior high, and one in the elementary level. I'm here because I'm concerned that I think our education system is being steered in the wrong direction. For years, it has been said that there's too much control of the education system placed in the hands of politicians. Many go further and say that the politicians don't know what they're doing, or that they are not educators, and therefore the choices made are not the best for the children. Today, we are saying that we don't have enough direction from the government, and that we need more information and guidance from them. So really the case? We were given a set of rules to follow and allowed to make the choices necessary to do so. Politicians will always place rules in front of us that will be ambiguous and needing further clarifications. It is our job as citizens in school districts to make choices based on that information that we have. If you are provided a set of rules that are not clear, then what should you do? Ask for clarification and do as little as possible to make sure you're meeting what guidelines they have provided. We have poured money and hours into a system that is not clearly defined nor fully supported at either the state level or the local level. As a district, we have a choice to make. Do we continue in the course that we have chosen? We now know that the 1 to 4 grading system was not a necessary change. When I first saw this system 5 years ago, I was horrified and confused. I went to a parent-teacher conference and had no idea what I was looking at, and no real explanation of what it was from my child's teacher, or from my wife, who is a teacher in the district. 5 years later, we still don't have clear information on what a 2, 3, or 4 really means, or how to get a 3 or 4. From conversations with my children's teachers, I'm left feeling sorry for them and my child. I'm sorry for my teachers, I'm sorry for the teachers as they have expressed a continued lack of support and training from the district, as well as a frustration on the topic of grading. Have we given them the proper tools and training to implement such a massive, unnecessary change? Do they have the support of their leaders when they express concerns or need better guidance? I feel sorry for our children because we are taking a risk that could have far-reaching and damaging consequences to their future. In Lewiston, we have a crisis in leadership. We have made unnecessary choices based on a lack of information and a lack of understanding of what was needed. We have a silent education corps that feels undersupported and underappreciated from parents and administrators. We have students that don't know what they need to do or can't explain how they are doing in school or what the grade they received means. This is the fault of not one level of leadership, but all levels. The education of our children is the responsibility of everyone in the district. Parents have failed to be an active part in the decisions being made until now. Administration has failed to listen to the voices that have been actively engaged. Good leadership can come from anywhere, and it listens to all parties that have a vested interest. Bad leadership fails to recognize mistakes it has made and continues on the same course. Regardless of the consequences, in closing, I would ask the school board to take the lead and slow down or stop this process. Thank you. Have a good night.
Sure how this one works, but yes, Matthew Roy, Ward 6. Well, I sent a email to the board this earlier today, but Mackenzie pretty much threw everything out, basically said everything I was going to say. But I'll put it like this. I was on the school committee for 4 years. Everything I've heard tonight, I told you so 4 years ago. Thank you.
Diane Chamberlain, 80 Bloody Hill Road. I was one of those people that he listened to 4 years ago. We fought this thing because it was not good, and all I'm seeing right now is the same pig with different lipstick. I'm sorry, but it's the same exact concerns that we stated back when my daughter was a freshman. I am just very grateful that she is not going to be a guinea pig for the school system anymore. I'm very happy that she's going to be moving on. I do reiterate one of the comments, though. I am very concerned because she has not had a midterm or a final in the 4 years that she's been here. That is going to be devastating when she gets to college, and I'm very, very concerned about that. We really need to make a change. Thank you.
All right, seeing no other comments, I'd like to say thank you for everybody for speaking, especially for those who are not comfortable speaking in front of a board like this. Not a very easy challenge to accomplish, so thank you for being here. For those of you who didn't finish in time or would like to share more, feel free to send us an email or contact us directly. We're always welcome to hear your voices. All right, moving on to agenda item number 4, report from student representatives. Oh, let's give time for people to move out. Student representatives available? You ready to go? All right, go for it.
All right, so I have two things I'd like to talk about tonight. I know I'll let RJ talk about more about, we were able to visit Farrell Elementary School as a little walkthrough, like Mr. Gagnon kind of requested we do. So I thought that was really cool, but she'll talk more about that. But kind of the main thing I want to talk about tonight is the school participation at the high school in particular, and then in the district as a whole, and outside opportunities outside of the classroom. This topic came up the other day, and it got a lot of response from the community members. And then when I brought it to my fellow students, this is a lot of what they had to say. So in my eyes and a lot of other fellow students, no one wants to participate in events, clubs, sporting events, musical, art events, and so much more. I try to go to as many school-sponsored events as possible, and what I see is really sad, honestly. Hardly any students show up. There's not much promoting of it. Now, this is definitely a school problem. It's probably not much something a district could do as a whole. But I think there are some things that could be done, so to say, to inspire the younger kids and the underclassmen, middle school students, elementary school students, to have them have more pride in their school, their district, in their community. For an example, tomorrow we have a meeting with all the student leaders at the high school about the upcoming winter carnival to get students, spark some energy in them and motivate them to participate and have some fun and care about coming to school for a change, which might be a change for some students. I know the advisor, Mrs. Stanley, puts her heart into stuff like this. Some other ideas worth considering would be to try to corral, I can't say that word. Yeah, more between the schools, having high schoolers do events with the middle schoolers during their spirit week, or perhaps the middle schoolers have a middle school night at the high school sporting events so they can see what it's like to be a high schooler and what it's like to have fun as a high schooler, what it's like to have fun in school, period. Even middle school to elementary school. And then you can kind of see the point where I'd be going with this. And just another example is in our Farwell visit, they have an upcoming dance that myself and a few other students are going to be volunteering at. And there was one student who was like, I'm not going to the dance, that's so awkward. And we were like, no, it's going to be fun. We're going to have high schoolers. We're going to show you what it's like to have fun and not be awkward. So it's things like that high schoolers could start inspiring the younger kids. And I think it's definitely top down from high schoolers to middle school to elementary, and even administrators to the teachers to the students. It really does start from the top for all these things. And I think having a better school environment where everyone cares and wants to get involved has endless benefits, especially in today's world. I don't really want to go into that, but creating this type of school and community environment is crucial, I think.
Okay, so I just want to add to what the audience have said tonight. So I heard the words fear, anxiety, stress, and the phrase lack of motivation. And honestly, these are the problems that my class, the class of 2019, is facing and will be facing in the future. As a junior who is thinking about life after high school, once we graduate, thinking about what we would do after we graduate, what am I saying? It honestly stresses me out to think that some of my peers are really troubled by this, and I personally, I'm sorry. Personally, I am still not ready to face next year, my senior year, because I'm scared. And I know that that's how a lot of my peers feel. And we have no idea what to do next year, and we don't know how to accept this change. And I'm just wondering, are we still going to keep asking for clarifications if there are problems, if we still don't understand these things? And so that's all I wanted to say. And about the Farwell visit, like Matt said, we had a tour and we had a short chat with Principal Winslow. And Farwell will be hosting a STEM-themed family night on March 7th from 5 to 6:30 p.m. And they will be having a spaghetti supper that evening, and the book fair will be open as well. And also with the district-wide dance, it's only for 6th graders. It will be this Friday, March 2nd at Farwell Elementary School, and it will be from 6 to 9:30. No, from 6:30 to 9 p.m. And that's all I have to say.
The dance is this Friday?
Yes, it's this Friday. It's from 6:30 to 9.
Okay, and that's at Farwell. And March 7th is, what was?
So March 7 will be the STEM theme family night.
Okay.
And it's from 5 to 6:30.
Very good. Thank you for your comments. We really appreciate it. At this time, you're welcome to stay, but if you'd like to go, I know you have other obligations you probably want to do as well. But you're welcome to go as well. Yeah. Let's see. All right, moving on to agenda item number 5. To receive and approve an overnight field trip request from LHS to travel to Williamsburg, Virginia on April 26th through the 30th of this year. Are you presenting? You certainly can, because I don't see Darren here. Okay. Presentation will be done by Jake Langlis.
It's weird with the mic. The trip is to Old Dominion to attend and perform, to attend different learning sessions and also perform. This is not an opportunity that happens regularly. Darren has organized this through the arts department at the high school, and they're bringing students down. There's a cost associated with that to students, and Darren has done all the legwork to plan for that, and that's included in the packet.
Discussion from the board?
I move we receive and approve the overnight field trip request.
Second.
Sparks. All right, any discussion before we go to a vote? No, see none. I will mention one thing. I've worked with some of these students, and they've worked hard over the past several months in raising funds. Some students had already raised their funds and contributed, but over the holiday season, several of them volunteered at the mall with Santa, so they had to be on their best behavior. And they all did a top-notch job, and they raised approximately $1,000. Actually, we contributed through that about $1,000. So we really appreciated having them as part of that holiday season. It was really joyous to have them. All right, moving on. Any other discussion?
Chair. Sorry. I just have a question about this trip. This is yearly, and why does it always happen after April vacation instead of during April vacation? It takes away almost, you might not know the answer to this, but I know my daughter took this trip several times, and it really starts to interfere with spring sports that start then. So I'm just wondering if maybe we can ask Darren or find out a little bit more about why the timing is after April vacation.
We can ask, he mentioned me in passing, but I don't know if it's about this particular trip or other opportunities that the college spring break lands on a different week, and this is the opportunity week for them to invite people in. But I don't know if that's for this particular one.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, seeing no other discussion, those in favor of approving the field trip? It's unanimous. All right, thank you. Before we continue, Mr. Shabbat, can you check the cooling again? I know that most people moved out. I don't want us to, huh? I just don't want those to freeze again, yeah.
And since this room has no heat, we just want to make sure that the air's turned off.
Okay, turn it off.
No, turn it off.
Thank you. Oh, okay. Moving on to agenda item number 6, to receive a presentation on educational programs to meet the needs of Lewiston's high school students, and also an update on the new school to eventually be located in the Longley building. This will be presented by LHS Principal Jake Langlis, Guidance Director Caitlin Paquette, and Spencer Trailer will present.
Good evening, everyone. That's why I kind of stayed here. I knew it was next. Sent a memo included with the packet around just some LHS program offerings. I want to build in a little bit of a context or a little bit of a history if I can. Starting last summer with my involvement in Shift to the high school, Tree Street partnered with us in a grant process, and we were awarded a grant to gather and do some research and do some building, some fact finding, and also some planning around starting a program that might meet students' needs differently. In that process, we learned a lot talking to students. Spencer's going to share some more of that when he comes up. But we had students involved, like Taheem, who's sitting in the crowd tonight. We started examining what do we offer students at Lewiston High School, the various programs, and how are we meeting the different needs that are presented with us or to us by every student who comes in the door. In that piece I shared with you, listed out a few things that we do provide students with this ongoing itch that there are students that we're not meeting the needs that they have. But students that are engaged in school, students who have the cognitive ability to do quite well, but who struggle in the current environments and the structures that we've built that I'll call traditional education. So we have some things that kind of cover the spectrum. I listed them in no particular order. We have advanced placement courses, certainly for high achieving students, and those occur in the high school level. I think position students well if they're successful to align themselves to a college opportunity. Also to take the AP exam, and if they score a certain level, some universities or colleges consider those AP exams for credit or CLEP-like experiences that can, for parents, save you money in the long run. We have our Bridge Year program, which is connected to the Lewiston Regional Technical Center, in which students take a CTE program, and in which they also take what they call dual credit or dual articulated classes, where they can take the classes with high school or at high school, but they get college credit. The goal of this program, with a few other pieces, they leave high school with an associate's degree. We also have Star Academy, which is a program we're looking to bring into the high school next year for a number of reasons. But Star Academy is for 9th grade students, and again focuses on that 8th grade foundations component and accelerates through 9th grade standards, but it uses a hands-on model in labs, particularly in math and science. We have what we call out-of-district placement opportunities for high school students. There's the Franklin School over in Auburn that works well for a lot of kids. We have limited spots there. That school is only so big, but they take again, a different approach with students. Some of it is asynchronous, so you can be behind in one spot and get caught up at others. You can have really productive weeks and months and do well. You can have spots where you just struggle in life, and it's okay to hit pause for a little bit as long as you're meeting their expectations. Poland Spring Academy, students go over to Poland or Poland Spring area, and they go to academy. That academy focuses on supporting students who might have more social emotional components, where the idea of walking into a high school to do academics causes them to shut down. That's not all kids, but they have that level of anxiety. Again, students who oftentimes perform quite well academically. We have Lewiston Academy. This is more after school, evenings. These are for students who, it's hard to stereotype, I'm not trying to stereotype, but oftentimes students who are more successful in an environment that is smaller in scale. And it meets afternoon, evenings. Sometimes that helps with family situations. Students are home watching their siblings or what have you. And other components. Some blended curriculum for standards recovery as well with that. For example, humanities course that blends both social studies and English standards for students that earn credit for graduation. We also have an alternative education program in our high school. I think it's a real particular brand of kid that can survive and be successful in certain kinds of environmental supports, can still function in and around the high school community, but prefers to have that kind of quiet space that's connected to but separate of. And then we also have things like Wayfinder and Passages, where students go to different campus and have their experiences work with their very particular needs. And we do this work, we think about a lot of offerings that we have. And Caitlin, you can chime in with anything that you may want to add. We talk about our design team work, and when we talk to students and we think, geez, we offer all these different things and we have all these different opportunities in school. But I want to be clear that we have limitations within those programs. Only so many kids can go to Passages or Wayfinder. Only so many can go to Franklin and PSA. Our Alt-Ed program, if you talk to the folks that work down there, they do amazing things with kids. There's so much more that they need. But I also think we're talking about a different group of kids. It's hard to define them with statistics because they're all people and they have individual needs and strengths and assets. But I think we're talking about kids that I want to paint a little bit of a picture for you, and Spencer can add to it certainly with some data that he's done research on. Brand of kid that comes to school almost every day, goes to most if not all classes, and is at least a year if not more behind the graduation pace. Doesn't lack good grades at times when they choose to do so. And there's lots of reasons for those choices. Some of it's cultural disconnect. Some of it's a disconnect from a race perspective. Some of it is just that bell schedule just doesn't work for everyone. And it's a brand of kid that we currently don't meet their needs. So of the findings through student voice and knowing that traditional schooling doesn't work for all kids, we started talking about this Longley Advisory Committee and this bar grant. And again, all these offerings are there, but not always space, doesn't always meet students' needs. We think about the kids who are engaged with the idea of doing well at school. And I think we want to dig deeper into what is that component and what we might be talking about for the benefits of how we might use that Longley space in the future. Part of that process, we brought on board Spencer Traylor, who is our new school design coordinator. And he and I have worked on a number of pieces with Julia and Tahim and Bill, and also the bar grant or Longley Advisory Committee. So Spencer, would you mind coming up and sharing maybe a few things that, insights and discoveries and things you have found?
So I have a few handouts. A few more. I might not have done great with my numbers here, but if you guys want to pass a couple of these around or cycle them through. So I don't want to reiterate too much of what Jake said. I'll try to amend my my remarks if they start to feel repetitive. But most of the existing alternative programs that exist in Lewiston currently serve students with high social, emotional, and academic needs. And these programs are very effective in providing the support that they're able to provide. However, there's a large segment of the student body who are currently struggling to meet academic success, whose needs may not be met through placement in those existing programs. The students that we've been working to identify, the students that we've been talking to, present various levels of attendance, disciplinary, or mental health concerns, similar to other students that are placed in existing alternative programs. And all of these factors should obviously be taken into consideration in the development of any new high school programming. That being said, we find that these students, more than anything, exhibit a lack of engagement in the high school's academic and social culture, conflict with peers and adults at the school, and a desire for greater independence in their academic process. To be clear, these students aren't disengaged because they don't care about their education. On the contrary, I'd say that these students are often very passionate about their educational process, and they want more opportunities to have a say in their learning and how their learning takes place. A lot of times that frustration can lead to some disengagement with a lot of these students that we've talked to. Our research shows that there are large segments of the school population that fit into this description, and that they would be more readily engaged in an alternative and educational environment that is driven by their passions and their interests. Many of the identified students do not feel that the this type of structural approach that we are going for currently exists within the district, and in our conversations, they've been very eager to be a part of that development, a part of the development of a new program like that. so something that could offer them a new way to engage in their learning process and engage in the development of their own learning. So that's just going off of that context a little bit. If you would like to go to the handout that I passed out, did everyone, at least on the school committee, get a copy of that? Great. So this document is really just meant to be a very brief sort of overview of what we've been doing so far, the work that we've done, and is by no means comprehensive, is by no means detailed. Some members of the advisory committee are on the school committee here, and they can tell you that there's a lot more going on behind the scenes, but really we just want to give sort of a brief overview that'll give you a sense of where we are in this process and where we're hoping to go next. So a little bit of background. In the summer of 2017, Tree Street Youth, in coordination with the Lewiston Public School Department and Wayfinder Schools, received a planning grant from the Barr Foundation for a community-driven research and development process to take place during the 2017-2018 school year. The purpose of this grant is to design a new school in collaboration with students who are struggling to meet academic success. This process coincides with current efforts in the district to better serve the needs of a growing student population and raise the graduation rate while maintaining high academic standards. This document serves as a brief overview of that design process and where it currently stands. So a big component of this has been collaborative design. This hasn't been a process that's just been driven by one organization, one entity, one school. This has been a collaboration between nonprofit organizations that serve students from this community, as well as public school department leadership. So on our design team, we have Bill Webster, the superintendent, Jake Langlis, the high school principal, Martha Kemp from Wayfinder Schools, Julia Sleeper from Tree Street Youth, Tahim Brimage, our student representative, and myself serving in the role of coordinator. This team works with an advisory committee composed of school and community representatives to provide guidance and feedback on research and design elements. At the core of this process, what we're trying to do is student-driven research and design. So this research and design process has been driven by stakeholder input and supported with the expertise of local professionals working with our student population. In order to develop a multidimensional understanding of our students, we analyze data from the student information system, student surveys, meetings with educators and administrators, student focus groups, and some comparative research with other schools and programs. Some of our most conclusive findings have shown that students struggling to meet success are experiencing adversity in school, for example, personal and social identity conflicts, acculturation issues, negative reputation, differences in learning needs, mental health concerns, social isolation, negative relationships with peers and or adults, etc., often compounded by adverse experiences at home. Poverty, homelessness, unstable home lives, disengaged or unavailable parents and guardians, unproductive or unhealthy social influences, etc. Despite these and other challenges, many of the students that we are looking at are driven by college and career aspirations and the desire to support their families and communities. Even students who are disengaged, struggling to meet success, or even regularly truant, express a desire to further their education. They tend to value self-expression, interpersonal communication, and independence in their schoolwork. And so we're working to develop an environment that also values those things. Our research concludes that the students that we've been working with would be best supported with a school environment informed by the realities of students' lives, social, cultural, social, emotional, academic, mental health, and trauma-informed supports, flexible curriculum that allows for multiple opportunities to learn standards, school culture that is inclusive and supportive, staff who work collaboratively with students, as well as intentional time and space for students and teachers to build relationships, experiential learning focused on real-world application, high academic standards that will prepare students for post-secondary success, opportunities for student leadership, as well as social and emotional supports for students and families that are embedded into the daily programming and structures of the school. So where we are right now, we are currently working to refine our design foundations through student and family feedback to ensure that our programs and processes reflect the realities of those student needs. We are starting to develop potential structures for staffing, student support, and instruction that will adequately meet student needs in a way that is sustainable and engaging. Right now, we are working to develop a budget and logistical plans for a small pilot program that would take place in the fall of 2018. We are working on identifying students for the pilot who are currently behind in credits and at risk of not graduating. And yeah, that's about it. Any other comments? Sure.
So I just wanted to, good evening. I just wanted to expand a little bit on some of the things that Jake spoke about earlier regarding some of the alternative ed placements that we already have, alternative programs that we already have. So we have partnerships with Franklin and Poland Spring Academy and Wayfinder schools, and we have a program within the high school. To date, I manage the placements in alternative programs for the high school students, and I coordinate with the middle school for the 7th and 8th graders who attend some of those programs. As of today, I've received 70 referrals for alt ed placements just in this school year. We have 20 spots at Franklin, 18 at Poland Spring Academy. We have about 30 students in our program at the high school during the school day. Right now, I think we have 35 students in Lewiston Academy. And Wayfinder is, I think we have 8 or so students there. Between the two programs that Wayfinder Schools runs, Passages for pregnant and parenting teens, and then Wayfinder Schools, which is their residential program. So, you know, I certainly see a need based on the number of students who have been referred for alternative placements and who have not been placed, who are waiting for a spot still, for there to be expanded options for students. Spencer and I were talking today about how do you make a profile for any one of these students, any one of these programs, and it's kind of hard to like put a finger on what exactly are the things that make a student appropriate for any one program. I would say, you know, the need that is met by most of the programs that we have in place now meet the needs of some of our students with some pretty significant emotional needs. It was talked about a little bit earlier in the public comment session about how there's a need to expand the social and emotional supports in our schools for students as students come to school with more and more problems that I would call adult problems, grown-up problems. Kids come to school with them at a young age. And so, I think that the things we have in place certainly do help, but there is always more that we can do. And so, is there more, Jake, you wanted me to say about numbers? And
So, Caitlin, you just referenced 70 students who are awaiting placement. Are they
who have been referred this year?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so there are students on that list who have been placed this year. Let's see, I have 3. I have like a color-coded list that I gave for. I would say there are probably 40 or so students who have not been placed. Some of those might be duplicate referrals. At one point they may have been interested in attending Franklin School, but now some time has passed and they think maybe I want to attend Lewiston Academy in the fall.
And in the meantime, they're continuing their education at their current placement?
Yeah, so we sometimes modify schedules.
Okay.
So a student may have a reduced schedule, or we may have them, they might be between different programs or transitioning. Some of the students, several of the referrals that I have in there right now that I'm looking at are for Lewiston Academy, and we do enrollment there based on semester because the classes are semester long. Kind of like you might have a college class that meets once a week for a semester. Lewiston Academy classes run a similar type of schedule. And so some students who are juniors, or maybe they're seniors and they know they're going to come back for a 5th year, we might plan ahead and say, well, if you do Lewiston Academy, you can graduate on time. Because of how the courses are structured, it allows them to earn credits and get caught up, get back on track. Yeah, you're welcome.
So I see that you're looking at a small pilot program for the fall of 18. I believe we received an email that said we were not approved on the 2nd year of the grant. So I'm kind of wondering where out of the budget this is going to come from.
So that is correct that we were not selected to receive an implementation grant, which was potentially for up to $750,000 from the Bar Foundation. We do have some monies left from the planning year grant. We also have some funds that we presently use for some of the Wayfinder programs, and it's conceivable that they may well be involved in a pilot so some of those funds potentially at least could be redirected. We also think that we have the potential for some other funding sources, and these are things that we'd like to explore further with the advisory committee and spend the next month honing on what this program might look like, and come back to the board at the appropriate time with a specific proposal with funding. But we didn't want to to move any further down that road without bringing the board up to date. This has been our plan all along, to bring the board up to date at this time. We are, we have a meeting with the advisory committee on Thursday, and we intend and plan, unless this board somehow felt otherwise, that we're going to continue this process and hopefully come up with a pilot that we could test and for next year. And one of the reasons we really much would like to do a pilot is to see, this vision that we're developing, can this be successful? Because if it is, we think that it could have great potential to be the program that would be located ultimately at the Longley Elementary School site. So to have a smaller pilot to help answer some of the questions we think would be helpful, as opposed to waiting a year and moving into that building not really knowing if our vision is appropriate or not.
If I may, Mr. Chair, I'd also add that every student that continues to attend school is counted in our subsidy, and some of those very students on that wait list may decide to stop coming, and I'm worried about that. I'd also add that we have a growing population at Lewiston High School, and I know while funding may be a concern, there are kids that I ask about these other programs who say, I'm not going to go there. But they know what they do want, but we don't have it. I think we have an opportunity to get that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, as you say, I just wanted to share in some of the, I guess, disappointment, frustration that we weren't approved for the grant. It's pretty disheartening to see. You kind of spoken it. LHS is going to be nearing capacity probably in the coming years here. So at some point, we're going to have to eventually think of expanding in some kind of capacity. Again, brings up the big frustration with me is that it's state policy, DOE, that you have to have certain classroom sizes and you want to reduce sizes. But when it comes, a growing population like Lewiston, for a state that says they want more people to come into it, especially young people, the state won't give us the funding to actually expand our schools and therefore, make more classes, reduce our classroom sizes. And to me, that's just incredibly frustrating. And it's put on a city that really can't afford it right now. And all we're trying to do is follow what the state tells us to do, and they won't give us the money for it. It's absolutely crazy. It's evil, if you ask me. It's just a failure in policy. So when we had the chance of getting this grant, I was really hopeful because it would take some of the money away that Lewiston would have to pay. And so very disappointed. But looking at it either way, we're going to have to do something to increase classroom space at LHS. Empty Longley building makes sense. So it makes sense to me to do some kind of LHS program in that building. I really like the direction you guys are going. Work with suspended middle and high school students each day, and I see a lot of the problems they have. And so, yeah, this could really create a support that doesn't really exist usually in most school districts in the country. So I'm supportive personally of a plan that goes forward, alternative education, some kind of plan for the new school. Just my say on it. And also, I just want to say, Spencer, I've noticed you've done a great job, so I just wanted to point that out. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Are there any others that would like to comment or questions? I just had one quick question. I know with the new school, it's structured so that we could have possible summer school there as well, which looks like that might happen. But has there been discussion around having this alternative program being a year-round school for especially those students that you were talking about?
I'll speak for myself. Spencer's talked to a lot of students. He may have more input. I think all of those things are on the table, but I also think some of the things we've talked about for students is that asynchronous component where it's not, this bell, then that bell, then that bell, and you have so many months to do a thing, and then it's over. So I think that model of maybe it's a reduced class load, maybe it's a different way of looking at. I think we've used the word pods. It's not a great explanation, but theme-based approaches, integrating multiple content areas in place, like it's a kind of a content area that can hit everybody, or a topic, something like cancer. That students could study that component and bring in so many other components. But those are kinds of things that could happen any time of the year. That could be a summer school or a summer learning opportunity. Things that really engage students and take a different approach.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to thank, I just couldn't help but thank you for the work that you all have done on this. It is challenging, but I think the way that you went about it and had student input, parent input, and were very thoughtful about this process. I just wanted to thank you for going through that process and hoping that it continues.
Yeah, absolutely. And if there are members of this committee or members of this audience or students or parents that who have opinions about these things, have thoughts that might be helpful in this process, we're still very much in that process of working with families, working with students to refine our design elements. That part isn't done, right? We're still moving forward with that. So anybody who's interested in having more conversations, hit me up.
So I take it it's going to go through the budget process?
We need to develop a budget and determine what adjustments, if anything, would be required from the city budget. So I see us coming back to this board before the final budget approval, which was, I believe, scheduled for the first week in April, something like that.
Okay, and are we going to have numbers ahead of time, of potential funding? Or funding request, I should say.
That will be our task to have that, yes.
And alternative grant funding, is there anything out there? Are you guys doing some digging in that direction?
So important question. We discussed this a little bit and want to add it to our agenda items for our Thursday's committee meeting to talk about what avenues and pursuits from grants and or other funding might the group approve or have thoughts on for alternative funding.
Seeing no other discussion, I thank you all for your time and continued support in this area. We look forward to your future discussions as well. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 7, to receive an update on the schedule of fall parent and teacher conferences presented by Assistant Superintendent Sean Chabot. As you know. Sean, you're on board.
So for parent-teacher conferences, the goal of the Proficiency-Based Implementation Committee, we came to the board over the summer to ask for expanded parent-teacher conferences in the fall. We met the Thursday before break and to discuss a survey that we plan on sending out to parents to gather their input on parent-teacher conferences for next year to make a recommendation to the board. So we are asking parents, because they would have had that experience from the fall of an expanded parent-teacher conference, and then the experience this spring in March and a little bit in April for the high school, of more of the traditional parent-teacher conference schedule. Which one was more effective for them in getting that information from their child's teacher? The expanded or the traditional version. And so our thought process currently is that we would do that survey. We're going to have it available electronically at parent-teacher conferences and also paper and pencil there for those that want to do that or need it translated. And then we will bring a proposal to Mr. Webster and then to the school committee if whatever proposal we make a recommendation for the next school year. So at this time, we're not ready to make one because we wanted to gather that parent input and let parents have that feeling of having both options this academic year, and then be able to be thoughtful on what would be the best for our parents and our teachers. So that's where we are with that proposal.
And just to piggyback on Sean's remarks, we felt we needed to at least give the board this update because it ties into the calendar that you will ultimately approve. And you're not being asked to approve a calendar tonight, but we are presenting one for discussion purposes. And you will notice that on this draft, we show the expanded parent-teacher conferences as we did last fall in October. On my computer, it shows up as purple on October's 1st, 15th, 22nd, and 24th. One thing I think we'd be remiss if we didn't make clear to the board that those days are still being counted for this calendar purpose as school days because only a minority of the schools are involved on any one of these days. The collective impact is one less student day. There are that is just one of the things that we need to consider. But it was one way that we were able to give that additional time for teachers to spend with parents. So where before it might have been on average 10 minutes, this was 20 minutes, sometimes a little more than that. So that's the reason we're doing that. And so those results should be available before the end of March, am I correct?
So parent-teacher conferences in the elementary school and the middle school is the end of March. The high school has theirs roughly the first week of April, right, the week before April vacations, 2 weeks before April vacation. So we will have that information sometime in April, depending on how many paper copies of that parent survey we get back. If a lot of parents do it by paper and not electronically, it will take us a little bit longer to collate that. But I anticipate sometime in April having a recommendation, Mr. Webster. Mr. Webster's point is valid and well taken that we did lose a day of learning because that at each school, but students didn't have to make up that day because the rest of the district went. We have added a second parent-teacher conference in the past 5 or 6 years. We used to only have one in the fall, and now we have one in the spring, March, and that has taken away that March workshop day as well. So we have added, and we've, over the past 5 or 6 years, have tried to see what works best for our teachers and parents around that communication piece.
So I'm just looking at the April calendar. There is a school committee meeting scheduled for April 9th, which is the week before April vacation. Traditionally, we've approved the calendar before April vacation because there are families as well as staff that take vacations that week, and in bookings for the coming year like to know what the calendar actually is. So I don't know if we'll have all the results back by then, but we'll certainly have much of the results by then. And so with input we would receive between now and then, including from the Teachers Association, we'd be asking you to approve the calendar then. I should also mention that by state law, we are required to have no more than what are called uncommon days between or among all the high schools that send students to Lewiston Regional Technical Center. So I have met with the 5 other superintendents of the sending high schools, so that's Poland, Leavitt, Oak Hill, Lisbon, Edward Little and us here in Lewiston. And so this calendar is in agreement with the drafts that they're also presenting to their boards in terms of when school starts, in terms of the workshop or exchange days, and in terms of the last day of school. Parent-teacher conferences are something that we do not coordinate per se.
Is there any questions from the board or discussion? Okay, seeing none, no motion is required, so we'll move on.
And I think I also did item 8 on the agenda, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Okay. All right, item 8, to review and discuss the draft of the Lewiston Public Schools 2018-19 school calendar. Would you like to further continue your discussion?
I think I presented the essence of what needed to be said, but there may be some good questions or ideas.
As there appears to be, who would like to begin? Ms. Hutchinson?
Okay, I'm looking at that October calendar. We have no school October 5th, no school October 8th, and a half day October 17th. Those kids do not get a full week of school at all. I would like to see us get rid of that October 5th workshop and the half day, early release Wednesday at the least. Maybe we can do it on the 29th, the week of the 29th, but to have no 5-day weeks that month, a month after starting school, is a little excessive.
I agree with Tina. My suggestion would be to look at eliminating the half-day Wednesday on October 17th and doing a half-day Tuesday on November 20th instead. So that would just start vacation, Thanksgiving vacation a half a day earlier. And I know it takes it from a Wednesday to a Tuesday, but I think that would eliminate at least one of those broken weeks in October. And then the teachers would still get their teaching time. That would be my suggestion. Mr. Chair. So one thing I'd be interested in understanding more fully, and I don't know that this sort of representation of the calendar gives us this at quick glance, but the hours of instruction compared from school year to school year. We heard a lot of comments today about how for lack of a better term, let teachers teach. And so I think it's really crucial understanding what is instruction time and what does that look like year over year.
Any other discussion on the board? Seeing none, we'll move ahead to item number 9, to receive a report and update regarding the Wellness Committee. This will be presented by Ms. Hutchinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Wellness Committee met on February 13th, and we discussed the possibility of a new event-like forum for the committee. We're already doing a lot of great things in our district, and the community would like to do more. To do that, we are looking for more student, teacher, and community participation. We're looking at possibly connecting with the health classes and connecting it to standards to show kids that nutrition and activity are fun. And the Maine Department of Education will be providing the district with a grant to promote nutrition and physical activity, and there will be more details coming as we get further into that grant process. What it will do is actually allow the Wellness Committee to become more organized and more impactful in our community. So if anyone wants to be a part of this, they can contact myself or Alyssa Roman. And good news that came in right before I came into this meeting, we have received a grant from a program called Move Salad Bars to School. It's a crowdfunding effort to supply salad bars to the schools, and we will have our salad bars have been fully funded, and we'll be receiving 2 brand new ones very shortly to go into our schools at no cost to the school budget, completely free.
What are you looking at me for?
I'm looking at Francis.
Just kidding.
It's money.
Thank you, Ms. Hutchinson. My son will be glad to hear that. He loves his health teacher. He still visits her since last semester, and we'll be happy to hear that. Sounds like salads will be improving, so he'll enjoy that as well because he eats better than I do at this point. Agenda item number 10, to receive reports from subcommittees and the legislative liaisons. We'll begin with the Technology Committee by Ms. Monique Roy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Today was our first subcommittee meeting, and we had a ton to talk about, and we ran out of time. But it was good. We really got a look at where we are with our technology. Some of it's quite dated. Some of it, we're trying to get on a better cycle. We're starting to review priorities, and these were priorities from Dave from technology in his group, but also they had an outside consultant come in from Barry Dunn to do a technology risk assessment and gap analysis report. So we started to dig into that, but like I said, there's a lot to it, and so we didn't get to finish that. I'm going to review and come up with some questions to see how it relates to budget. I do know that Mr. Terrio said that he's continuously cutting his technology budget and working really hard to make what he has work. And so I want to thank him for that because we appreciate it, and your whole staff, who I know are overworked. But yeah, that's what we got into. Bill, anything you wanted to add?
I will just add that our next meeting is coming up on April 9th, but before that, Dave Terrell will be making his budget presentation to this board, and I think it's good having you as chair of that subcommittee a little more familiar with what's going to be part of that presentation, because this school committee will have some tough decisions to make on the budget. There's not enough money to do all the things that we both want and need. Thank you.
Moving ahead with the Administrative Subcommittee, and Mr. Luke Jensen will present.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let's see. Yes, we met for the first time tonight. Meeting went well. Much like the Technology Subcommittee, we were a bit short on time. It's probably a good problem to have, though. These were productive. So only a 3-item agenda. One item was just districts in Maine. There's a shortage of superintendents, so it's best to get that process started as soon as possible. We decided to refer that to the Negotiations Committee, given the confidential nature of any kind of contract, so it just made more sense. Second thing, we had 2 members of the Lewiston Education Association, Samantha Garnett-Sias and Allison Litton. They just presented regarding like teacher morale, how they felt, ways that we as a school committee could essentially help them, and also to give her a chance to vocalize any frustration maybe with any school committee decision, stuff like that. So I took a lot of notes on that. We'd be here quite a while if I went through everything. We'd go on a lot of tangents. So if anybody has any questions, please, I can talk to you about it. I can take a screenshot of the notes if you even want that. Any member of the public as well. More than happy to send any info or meet with anybody. Yeah, just some of what we heard from public comment, but just more, any job you work can be better. I mean, I say that. Of all the jobs I've worked, every single one of those jobs could have been made better. So just doing our due diligence as a district, and so we want to keep that conversation going with staff about how ways we can always improve things as a school committee. Anything that we can do, really. So as far as the committee goes, the subcommittee, I think we can keep the conversation going on this. We'll come back and report to you guys with any kind of substantial recommendation, policy change that we can think of. So that's kind of the plan going forward. If you guys have any suggestions or anything you'd like the committee to discuss, feel free to send it to myself or to Miss Avery, who's co-chairing with me. So we'll get that on an agenda. And let's see, the third item, which was referred to us by the school committee as a whole at last meeting, regarding LD 1492. Had a bit of a conversation on it. We didn't feel comfortable making a decision. We didn't take any official vote. I know it's coming up in just a few days here. So just as a group, the consensus really is that we didn't want to give an opinion on this. And so if the board itself decides it wants to take action, by all means, but as a group we just decided not to take any action on this.
When we talked about it going to subcommittee, there was a discussion of Bill Grant being involved before and to be a part of any discussion for 1492. Was he there?
He was there. He spoke. He was very informed, as always. Yeah, from his take, he felt that it could certainly be done. It wasn't impossible. I mean, obviously, it does come with some concerns, but he was comfortable. The impression I got that he could get it done in the adult ed system. And a lot of what he talked about too was just more like the intricacies, the background behind it, a lot of that. So, absolutely.
I did participate with the administrative committee, and he seemed, like he said, very open and very informed compared it to what was occurring currently in Portland, and how the process came about to this stage. It's going to the legislation in just several days, and that's one of the reasons why the committee decided not to take any stance on it, because regardless, it's going to go through its process very quickly anyhow. And whether it goes through or not, it'll either benefit or not do anything for this community. So that was one thing. And yeah, I'll just leave it at that. Thank you. Are you all set?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Thank you. Yep.
Just for clarification's sake, I don't think that we decided we weren't going to take a stance on it. I think we were running out of time, and then we just didn't vote. So there were some of us that were speaking for it, some of us that were speaking against it, and some that didn't have an opinion at all, and then we ran out of time. So just for clarification's sake, it wasn't that we as a committee decided we weren't going to take a stance. We just didn't. if that's any clearer.
Yeah, I do say my plan was to pull a straw poll at the end. I did ask for a straw poll, but the consensus of the group was really like we could debate this for probably another 2 hours and really get more into it, and people weren't exactly comfortable with the information they had. So it wasn't that a vote was avoided, it was just I asked for it, and the kind of consensus of the group was, well, we're not really ready to make a decision, so we just decided we'll table it. We can review it again as a committee, but at the end of the day, it's going to be voted on at the legislature in like 3 days, so it's kind of there's not much we can do here. But yes, that is, yeah, just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you for that clarification. We'll move on to teaching and learning, and Ms. Tina Hutchinson will present.
So we stayed within the allotted time and didn't run over. We also met for the first time and we discussed the 4 goals that are our main focus, which include PBL, summer programming, the co-teaching pilot model, and a greater collaboration of Lewiston Adult Ed and Auburn Adult Ed. We decided as a group that we are going to focus on the PBL as the umbrella, and everything else falls under that umbrella. And we're not going to just meet every other month before a school committee meeting. We're going to do a work group meeting on the off months so that we can try to move forward with some of the work that we will have to do in committee to bring recommendations back to this committee. Our next work group meeting is March 12th at 5 o'clock. And that's about it, unless Sean wants to add any more.
Mr. Chair, Tina, could you talk a little bit more? I guess I didn't get what you were saying about the umbrella piece. Thank you.
So we have 4 goals. One of them is on PBL, one of them is on the summer programming, one of them is on a co-piloting with special ed and gen ed teachers, and one of them is a greater collaboration. So PBL impacts each one of those in some way. Like in summer programming, some kids are making up standards, some kids are using it as a challenge. In the gen ed and special ed combined co-teaching classes, PBL has to work, the standards have to work for both the special ed students and the gen ed, and they have to be, and we have a lot of students that choose not to go into standards recovery or after school programming, but decide instead to drop out and attend adult ed and get the high set. So we're trying to get it all to work together as one.
I just want to, I totally get the first 3 buckets being under PBL, but adult ed and high set is not, it's not the same system, and they come in and they do specific testing. They have tutoring in those areas. So that seems a little outside of the umbrella.
As we were told tonight, that some kids decide they're not going to do it through the traditional programming, they're going into adult ed. Bill Grant decides this is where the collaboration between Lewis and Auburn comes in. If they go into an Auburn adult ed class and get the actual credit, or if they go into the high set mode here at Lewiston. So it's a collaboration between Lewiston and Auburn to place these kids in the right areas. So they would be meeting standards through the adult ed, sort of, because they have to have a proficiency diploma. So if they're going to adult ed for their classes that they missed, let's say they missed senior English and they take that type thing, yeah.
Any further discussion? Okay. Moving ahead with the legislative liaisons. School committee members Monique Roy and Mark Kerr will present.
Go ahead. I mean, have we done it? Well, I know, but we didn't do anything. Yeah, we haven't done it.
Nothing to report. All right, there we go. We'll continue ahead with agenda item number 11, report from City Council representative.
We have been busy since we last met. We had a city council workshop on February 13th. We had a briefing on opioid addiction issues and some work that is being done in that arena through Tri-County Mental Health. Hopefully we will over time see more results from that. We also heard about Bates Mill number 5, but that's not really school relevant. Other than that, not really much else. We did have a joint meeting with Lewiston and Auburn councils and mayors in which we talked about, I think, one of the more important parts of that that might impact the schools is the 911 communication system for Lewiston Auburn as a capital project, and the cost of that and how that might trickle down to other capital improvement project plans. It is much more than was initially quoted to the councils, and so it will be a joint council decision, but I could foresee that having some trickle down effect about what is left in the pot. Also commended our facilities subcommittee for their work to really bring down that capital improvement plan budget. So thank you all for that, and we recognize that publicly at council. Thanks.
All right, moving ahead to item number 12, report from school committee chair. I will keep it brief. I see that the subcommittees are moving ahead well, breaking in And I also wanted to mention, I know we're meeting the subcommittees publicly every other month or so. Just as a reminder, you can also meet, beforehand to continue your progress. I know several of the committees have done that. Negotiations is one of those currently. That's one that will fluctuate depending on the time of year as well. But just to remind folks that don't feel like you're being constrained to just those meetings. I will be meeting with Bill tomorrow in regards to the next meeting. It's going to get a little crazy with March upon us with budget season. So that'll be a challenge for me because I'd like to get the agenda out sooner, but we'll work with what we have for a challenge in budget season in March. And that's about it. I'll leave it at that. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just curious, and maybe I missed something along the way. Is there a list of subcommittees and their membership available on the website in addition to the agendas for those subcommittees, or are we not going through that formal of a system?
That is a good question. I don't think it's been updated since we came up with the subcommittee schedule, has it?
Yeah, at this point, we have never done anything like that in regard to the subcommittees. Whereas the structure is new, if it's something that the board would like to promote, we can see about getting something on there and maybe with some contact information.
I think that would be great. I've had some questions from constituents about the intent and also what's going on at those meetings. Thank you.
Thanks for bringing that up. And I can certainly do this in email or discuss it here. But one of the things that was brought up to me is we could also put our information, like contact emails or whatever, on the agenda, like on the back of it. I mean, it's currently on our website, but it's one thing when someone just comes to the door, sees our agenda. That's another form of communication. If folks want to discuss that, that might be something that I was considering doing. Looks all right? All right. Thank you. Thank you. Let's move ahead to agenda number 12, report from number 13, from the school superintendent.
Yes, just a couple things to report on. Today was the first day back from school vacation week. We did have ice week at both the high school and middle school, and I've heard great reports from the middle school. Although, as I tweeted today, given the temperatures some days last week, ice week may not have been the best name for it. But as the board knows, we have a meeting on Wednesday night in regard to a grievance hearing, and I believe that's to be preceded by some Google training. Is that right, Dave? Is that at 5:30? 5:30, and then the grievance hearing will be at 6:30. Also, next Monday night is both a regular and budget meeting. And I wish we could have it to you earlier, but we will spend time near the beginning of that meeting presenting the budget books to you. It will be in both hard copy and in Google Docs, and going over that so you understand the mechanics of the book. And then we also have our first 3 budget presentations that night, and that will take up much of the 2 meetings a week for the month of March.
Thank you. Agenda item number 14th. Are there any future agenda items you would like to see? Mr. Jensen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to say it was back in October, we tabled a motion to spend emergency funds on adding an ed tech with the suspension diversion program. I was hoping we could review that at an upcoming meeting.
Mr. Kara, did you have something?
I did. So I don't like this where it is because I'm turning most of the way it's talking here. So I hope the mic picks it up. So I'll leave it there. But, yeah. I'm not sure that this needs to be an agenda item, but when I was on the city council, it bothered me then, and today it was really highlighted with the public discussion we had. The requirement that whoever wants to speak has to provide their address. I find that I've always found that concerning in these times, especially when we're asking students and staff to do it. I think it would be more appropriate if someone just explained they were either a Ward 6 resident or a Ward 1 resident, so that they knew the person who represents them on this committee would know it. So maybe you and Bill could have a discussion about that. I'm not convinced that it needs to be a committee vote, but something to consider. Thank you.
Thanks for the words of advice. I think my concern I've had in the past about that is that some people don't know which ward they're in. But I did hear a few people mention it, so it'd be worth adding to it. So thank you for that. Any other future agenda items? Yes.
I received a very nicely written email from a constituent who has requested that, and I know this has been brought up multiple times before, that we have some kind of a discussion regarding the Lewiston Public Schools website. And she referred to it as the face of our school district, and that it's awful. And we should look at Bangor and Portland schools' websites and maybe try to mirror those because they're very well formatted. And she had a lot of very good information that she provided supporting her request, but she would like us to have a discussion at some point regarding updating our website.
And if I may just share a little information, because I think Dave, among others, would be the first to agree with that assessment. In fact, we did get a quote last year. It was far in excess of $30,000. And but I do agree that we need to look at that, and probably that ought to be part of the technology subcommittee discussion as well.
Thank you. Good observation. It's been brought up to my attention about the website. We've talked about it in the past as well. So, and I was just going to ask you to go to one of the subcommittees. So thank you. Any others? Okay. Moving ahead to agenda item number 15, to discuss school safety and security. No motion is required on this, but Mr. Bill Webster will present.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to give the school committee a brief update on where we are in this area, and there may also be members of the public here tonight that would like to weigh in. Obviously, the events that happened in Florida weigh heavily on all of us, given both our responsibilities and our love and care for the students that we are responsible for. Internally, we are continuing to review the information that we have from not only Florida but other incidents that have happened. We are working with our safety officer, and we'll also be including our safety committee, and as well as building administrators in reviewing in effect, doing an audit of all our buildings. We've done this in the past, but it's something that really needs to be ongoing. And so that is presently in the works. And in fact, if there were a school committee member that would like to serve on the safety committee, be pleased to make that connection. It's chaired by Peter Gagnon, who is our assistant director at LRTC. Oh, okay, great. So let the record show that Tanya Estabrook has offered to participate in that effort. Um, in your packet, and I think most, if not all of you, have seen it earlier, is a letter that I sent out in regard to the Florida incident. This really is a challenge for all of us in public education, and we're going to, in executive session, discuss some things about our emergency plans that we do not make public. But I think that in addition to maybe opening this up to the public, I also want to at least have this be an opportunity for us to share with the school committee our latest thinking on the national walkout that's scheduled for March 14th. And at the appropriate time, Principal Langley is prepared to sketch that out for you. So basically, we have a partial plan that we expect to have finalized over the next couple days after further reflection, talking to other school districts, and in meeting with some of our student leaders, one of whom is Board Representative Matthew Hurd. Some school committees are getting involved in this issue about what, if anything, can or should occur on March 14th. And this committee certainly has the opportunity to do that. I will say that there's a very fine line between helping students express themselves in an appropriate way, while at the same time not having schools be a platform for a particular political platform. And I've already received many emails from parents, teachers, and students on this subject, and they run the gamut from here to here. So what, perhaps after any public comment, if we want to then move to March 14th, Principal Langley is prepared to share a rough outline. Again, the board can choose to get involved. I'm not sure that it's something that the board would find particularly satisfying to get involved, but it's up to you.
Well, since you brought up public comment, I'm going to ask are there, by a show of hands, anybody who would like to speak on this matter? All right. You know the rules, right?
I did notice today that, well, as we all know, most of you might know, the legislature is technically supposed to be winding down, but I did see that Representative Corey tomorrow, because the Legislative Council's meeting tomorrow for the after deadline things, and there are some proposals. He's basically proposing to actually have a $20 million bond go out, possibly, for infrastructure or logistical needs at schools, that the Department of Education, in conjunction with the Department of Public Safety, would, I presume, do some kind of audit, decided put a $20 million bond out regarding infrastructural type needs to prevent these type issues. You can make all the arguments, like Bill said, he's probably seen every position you probably could take on this in the last probably week and a half or so. The only thing that probably will the one type measure that, at least in my opinion, that would probably do anything on the subject is actually something along with, he probably hasn't actually got the language draft. It's probably more a concept draft at this time for our bond, but in conjunction with DOE and the state police would probably do some kind of audit, I'd imagine, which would probably be the most effective, we think. You know, until we actually solve this issue that kind of started, it's been permeating for the last 4 years when we basically closed all the mental health institutions and hospitals, and the county jail system took that over for whatever that where we get to. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roy. Anyone else? Okay. Could you step up to the podium? Yes, please. Yeah. You could hit the button. Thank you.
Okay. I did have a conversation very briefly today with Joan Macri, former teacher, and she did say that she was interested in perhaps organizing for retired teachers to maybe be along the walkout route if that was something. So that's just something that was put out there. And thank you for considering looking into this. I think it's important.
Any others? Thank you. Moving on. Mr. Shabbat, you're going to make a presentation? Mr. Langlis, sorry. You look alike sitting next to each other, right?
So I don't have a ton to say, but I am curious if the school committee wants to weigh in on just a couple of things that have come together talking with students. And I have another meeting with a couple of students interested in doing something on that day. I am working very hard to not take any kind of political stance. I also don't think that's best for our school. And I'm also concerned that whatever we do, if anything, there's an element of risk of what else might show up, and I'm mindful of that. So with the idea that this is this concept of a walkout being a reality, I would predict that whether we do anything coordinated with students or not, we will have a lot of students stand up and walk out of Lewiston High School. I think that's a reality, and I think I've had enough students approach me in the hall today from layers of concern. Did you know about? Did you know about? Did you know about? But also different pockets of students trying to coordinate differing efforts that all included the walkout. So again, trying to harness that energy in a positive way. I, as principal, this year and in years past, if certain tragedies have popped up, have done school-wide assemblies where we've talked about making sure we're taking care of each other and ourselves and our school and our community. And so my initial pitch in talking with some students, and again, more to come, was to bring everyone into the gym, talk about our school being a safe place, talking about our procedures and our protocols. This would be on the 14th, prior to the 10 o'clock window. Inviting, if appropriate, local authorities. I've also had a communication with Joe Macri and some other folks that have offered a non-political support stance. And with school committee input, I would consider my next discussion with students and sending a letter to parents to inform them of what would be an optional walk around the school, going up maybe the gym doors and around to the front lobby and back to your class, or vice versa. Something that is coordinated, supported, and what I would like for it to stand for is we don't support that here. We don't support school violence here. This is a safe place to be, if anything. So with that, I'm open to any input, knowing it's a highly politicized topic.
Any input or questions, comments from the board? Ms. Hutchinson?
Is there going to be any consequences for these kids that choose to walk out?
I would struggle the consequences student for walking out for a cause that they believe in that's connected to our school being a safe place.
And my other thing is, I feel it's important we show support for our students. They have chosen to use their voices in the only way they know how at the moment. They can't go to Washington or Augusta and actually vote. They can't vote at the polls. They can't institute changes themselves. They have to do it through a third party. So I would be one of those parents, and I'll put my parent hat on. I will be willing to be at that school at 10 o'clock on the 14th and make sure our students stay safe and they feel supported by their community and their parents, and I think as a school board as well. Thank you.
If I may, Mr. Chair. I would love Tina to be involved. I would love for her to wear her school committee hat. Because I think for an event like this, if we invite parents, we have to invite all parents. And I think that we want to be mindful that there are a lot of varying views, and this would be a student expression and not a platform for parents to share theirs.
Mr. Kerr?
So I'm really happy to hear that there'll be no consequences because I, like you, we have students being gunned down in schools around this country and the inaction of adults to make them feel safe. So it's really time for some change, and I think this is going to be what forces change. Students finally taking it into their own hands, and it's very disappointing that that even has to happen. When I watched that video of the shooting down in Florida, you could hear that AR-15 going off in the hallway. And I've been in an enclosed place with AR-15s going off, and you can feel the vibration through your body, just the sound of it. So I can't imagine the fear that students go through. So to the adults who balk at this and think this isn't the appropriate platform for our students to stand up and say they want a safe place, I think they're wrong. And again, I commend you for not even considering discipline of any type.
Mr. Chair. Thank you for saying to Tina, come as a board member. I do definitely want to attend to make sure that our children are safe. And so I will be there as long as my work permits me to be there. So thank you.
Mr. Jensen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know if it's been talked about. Are we going to be able to monitor to make sure like members of the public don't come on school grounds, parents? Do we have any kind of safeguards in place for that?
So I think part of what will need to happen is to coordinate with authorities. I have not done all of that yet. I think that there were some steps I want to take first, and today's our first day back from the break, and I knew we had this meeting tonight. I've got some ideas, up to and including, not allowing media on campus. Because again, I believe when we invite certain components, we invite everything that comes with it. So for every media opportunity for kids to express themselves, I believe it's a media opportunity for somebody else. So we've even discussed how we might keep our campus maybe closed for a few minutes to do this activity.
You might not be able to answer this, Jake, but maybe Bill, is this an activity solely planned for the high school? I'll let you answer and then continue.
Our plan right now is that this will solely be for the high school.
Okay. I don't know if there's possibility that other grade levels might wish to be involved, but as we talk about the issue of school violence, I was living in Connecticut when I know what it is, Matt. Thank you, though. When Sandy Hook occurred, and elementary school students have to deal with this fear, middle school students as well, and so I think it might be appropriate to extend the programming if there is subscribed programming that comes from this. If that is going to be the recommendation of the school committee, I'd love for that to be considered. And I realize that's not your purview, Jake, but.
So if I may, so absent a directive from the school committee, I don't see us doing something below the high school level for a couple of reasons. One, I think that there are many students at the middle school and at the elementary school level that participation in an awareness event like this would be scarier for them than not doing anything. Secondly, I'm very fearful of the backlash that we might receive from many adults in our community in feeling that we're somehow imposing something on these students, as opposed to at the high school level. We have many high school students that are articulate, are thoughtful, are reflective, and I think would appropriately participate in this.
I appreciate that being put out there for all to understand. And I think that is the right call personally, but did want to give that opportunity for those who may understand what's going on and be fearful and want a reason why that might not be appropriate. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, may I? Want to begin by saying I'm sorry that you went through that and that fear because it's real. And so with the elementary school, I know that my child is elementary, my stepchildren, and this was a really good opportunity for us to sit down as a family and discuss what was going on at preparations in your school. Are you having drills? What would happen if you heard guns in the school? What would you do? And our kids really didn't know. They thought there was a right answer or a wrong answer, and I was like, it was just a really good opportunity to discuss these things. And I don't, I think like Bill said, maybe if they had some type of walkout, it would just be more detrimental. They don't really understand that whole standing up for what you believe in, that type of thing yet. But I hear your concern with that. Thank you.
Mr. Chair. So, Jake, I would just have a question. There are students who would not want to participate. This is a disruption in the day, which is, I get totally why, but there will be students who do not want to participate. What will be happening in the school while the students are participating in this event?
So if it goes the way we anticipate, the assembly is meaningful for everyone, and we're going to talk about procedure and safety at the high school. I think the component, if this works out perfectly, as we exit the gym, it'll be those who wish to participate. And yes, it'll be a disruption and a bit of a takeaway from some of the instruction, but that lap around the school, 3/4 of the school from the gym to the front entrance or vice versa, is not going to take so much time. I don't believe that it will disrupt the school day. Students who wish to not participate, my initial thinking is to have some administrative folks hang back in the gym and stay with them. And it would only be for a couple of minutes, and then they could make their way to their classrooms. Because as the students make their way around the building, teachers should also be coming back in as well. And for what it's worth, our arrival at the high school, this is kind of what happens every day. This many people come into our building in a very short window of time. And I don't know if Michelle wants to chime in. I don't think it'll be a massive disruption for students.
I did want to add, if they could go back to their regular classrooms, that might be a better option for students who are the ones left in the gym. Believe it or not, students will call them out for not walking. And that's where I don't want this to end up is, you didn't do it, I didn't do it, right? It's not, people who feel strongly about it should be allowed to do it, and students who are not comfortable with that should be able to go back to their regular classrooms. So, or I just don't, it's a complete divide if you have one group outside and one in the gym. I just wanted to point that out.
I think that's an excellent point. I think we also want to consider, we did this earlier this year when we had the threat of violence at our own school, where we had our discussion groups meeting to talk about what does this mean to you, and maybe we can build in a component like that. The students have a voice that maybe they're allowed to state something, maybe on their way through the cafeteria, to share maybe a counterpoint of their own. But I like the idea, so they're not singled out.
Just want to add to what Ms. Hutchinson was saying earlier about students not being able to vote, but they certainly have an influence, especially on our students, not just the students, their friends, to us, especially as parents, who we do make decisions. And I want to thank you for putting the thought process through this and discussing amongst your staff and coming to us today. Also, I just had one last question in regards to Star Academy. I know it's a different campus at the same time this is going on. Was there any consideration into that?
So as they are high school students, I actually have a meeting tomorrow morning with Travis Jalbert, the dean, to talk about and review safety protocols, but also to talk about him getting a level of interest from the students that would be at the Armory at that time, to see if they want to participate at their location or maybe bus over to us.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All right. Thank you. All right. Agenda item number 16 is to enter into an executive session to discuss school security in accordance with 1 MRSA 4056C. Superintendent Bill Webster will present. Do I have a motion?
Second.
Quartermash. I have a motion by Ms. Quartermash and a second by
I think Tina got it.
Oh,
Mr. Kerr.
Tina.
Tina Hutchinson.
Yeah.
All right. We have a motion and a second by Ms. Cloutier and Ms. Hutchinson. All those in favor? I didn't. Okay, it's unanimous. We are in executive session.
Restroom break real quick?
No, right here's fine. All right, we just have to make sure the video is in executive session. I see it in black over here. It says executive session. Yep. Oh. Okay, we'll take 2 minutes to just take a rest break.
And I would ask Bobby, Sean, and Jake to remain for this.